Hi, and welcome back to our Ask Agronomist video series. I am Phil Long, Precision Agronomy Advisor with Latham High-Tech Seeds. And this week we're going to tackle a discussion on dicamba and using it in season. 2 quick tips on how to utilize it the most effectively it can in your soybean herbicide program. So to get started, I got to talk about mode of action groups. I'm going to also give the disclaimer that I'm not going to go over all the rules and regulations, and they change by state. So making sure that you have your certification up to date and your training up to date and understand the rules and regulations in your particular state is really important. But the first thing I want to talk about today is mode of action groups. And this is something that when you pull up a label on your herbicide, you're going to see those numbers show up right on the front, right under the name. Something that we should all be used to by now because it helps us understand herbicide resistance and gives us an easier way to think about it because each of these herbicides have a number beside them. So you can write the numbers down and make your plan and make sure that you're not continually using the same ones over and over. Now these ones are the ones for soybeans, particularly in season. It's not the only ones you can use, but these are the primary ones, and these are the ones that get the most pressure. That's why I have some in red. 2 is ALS inhibitors, and 9 would be glyphosate, ones that really aren't effective on a lot of our resistant weeds. 4 would be our 2,4-D dicamba group, and then we have 10, which is Liberty, as well as 14 and 15, which still have some use in season and in some areas are still very effective. But we just got to be cautious because there definitely is resistance to 14s, 15s, and even 4s and 10s. So there's resistance in all these groups, but the key important thing is making sure you're mixing it up. If you're using Extend soybeans this year and you're planning on using an XtendiMax herbicide, don't use dicamba next year in corn. So don't keep hitting those weeds in that same field with that same essentially mode of action. That's what the numbers are for, but that same herbicide. That's what we're trying to get out of to make sure that we can keep these herbicides and utilize them as long as we possibly can and reduce the amount of herbicide resistance that we're seeing. So the first tip is use it as a burn down. So use dicamba as a burn down. It's a great option there, especially when you're using it on Extend. Make sure that you got to be using Extend Flex soybeans, and then you can use the XtendiMax or dicamba product that's labeled for that before those beans. You could even mix something else with it if you need a little more control. Caution on glyphosate though, but there's a lot of other options that you can intermingle. Just make sure you're paying attention to the label and tank mix options there. And then follow it up with something like a group 14 or 15 in season. Like I mentioned, they're still great products. You just got to be cautious, especially on the group 15s. You can't go too late with many of them in season, but it's a great option, something like Warrant, or even just going back to the 14s, Flex Star or something if you have good efficacy. The key there really is hitting the weeds when they're small, making sure that you're getting them when they're smaller plants, not trying to tackle a 6 to 8 inch weed is the key with those. And they're still very effective in many areas. So that's one option. The next option would be using it early post. So in this case, use a good pre. Hopefully you understand that, but pre is extremely important nowadays, and getting residual and even layering those residuals throughout the season is key. Until we get canopy closure is really important. But so if we're using it as an early post, think about it this way: use a good product like Authority, which also is a group 14. You can mix it with other products. Obviously it gets kind of expensive. The more of those residuals that you use, those are usually the pricier ones. But mix it with something if need be to control certain weeds that you have issues with. And then follow it up with dicamba in season. You can still put something on like Warrant, or if you wanted to mix it with something else, there's a lot of other options. So pay attention. There's tank mixing website as well. It makes it really simple to add things in. Make sure that you get the right tank mix that's compatible for XtendiMax. Use those tools, but just make sure that whatever you do, number one, you're spraying the weeds when they're smaller. Whether it's dicamba or any other of these products that are seeing herbicide resistance, we need to make sure that we're hitting them when they're smaller and layering that residual throughout the season until we get canopy closure, because soybean fields continue to get weedier and weedier, unfortunately, and we don't want to keep seeing that. We want to be able to use these herbicides as long as we can. So the last thing I would say, if you are struggling with a lot of these things, if they're not, or depending on what you've got selected for herbicides this year, obviously that plays a part too, but going forward into the future, in the following years, maybe consider using something like a cover crop. And I'm not saying this just to talk about cover crops, but it really is a IPM approach, pulling in different ways of managing those resistant weeds, and they are very effective, even in our area here against water hemp, things like cereal rye. Look at different options and what can potentially suppress those problematic weeds you have. When do they show up? When can you help kind of suppress them and keep them down? And then layer those residuals and herbicides when either a cover crop's not there and the soil is bare and you're trying to close that canopy. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. As always, give us a call at 1-877-GO-LATHAMS or visit us on our website at lathamseeds.com. Thanks for watching this week's Ask the Agronomist.